If I'm not working or putting work in, I'm either wheeling and dealing or probably jerking my listening to nothing, taking no suggestions or destructive criticism that can't improve on perfection. Rockin' crowd in sections on a good night, the host fight. Always get the dough first and everything else goes right. At least that's what they say. Who the fuck is they? Make a hick say, what the hey? Talk that shit from sick bay. Ensign, he should've asked his upperclassmen before he bust blast and never trust no Kardashians. Captain Log Supplemental. The Klingons are now aboard the Enterprise rental vessel. On my cue, photon torpedo. Oh, and if I'm not on the block with Jorgito and so on for the street though, smoking Pondelito, I'm joking on the fact that hip-hop is wrong.
What the hell? Children are not allowed on the bridge.
Hi everyone, welcome to episode 11 of the Conquest of Popcorn. I'm Bardo.
I'm Pinko.
And today we're joined by a very special guest, a buddy of mine from back home, yungneocon from Twitter, who you might know from his like 240 tweet threads that I've like read more than I've read books this year. So how you doing tonight?
I'm all right. How are you?
So far, so good.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty good.
I mean, this came up because I saw you dunking on Luke Savage's. I don't think he didn't write the article. He was just commenting on an article about how Star Trek is socialist, or the Federation is like a socialist enterprise, and you said no, and he actually got back to you.
Well, and also he was criticizing Discovery because like that it didn't live up to the article claimed that it like was a betrayal of it and was like this nihilistic, it like lost the biggest conceit of Star Trek, just replaced it with big explosions, and I thought that was just wrong. It seems like they wanted it to, like, I don't know, pre-reflect their like, they like the show, so they want it to like be their ideological worldview all the time, and and that whole crew of people like always it's like too cool for school and likes to hate on newer things.
Yeah.
Well, they're like published authors, so
Yeah.
They're much like they're more communist than now.
I mean,
a lot of them.
I've not watched.
Get dragged for saying this shit, but
I've not watched any of the new show at all. In fact, I've only watched The Next Generation, which we somehow powered through 7 seasons in like 2.5 months or something like that. I'm feeling good about that. But
we like only watched Star Trek. It was like brief breaks for Adventure Time.
Yeah, it's like similar. I'm similar right now.
Yeah, I mean, it was great. It was fun. It was like I laughed a lot. It's one of the things I really like about it is that there's like this really every single episode is like ham-fisted social commentary that doesn't really say anything, but just like this like what if kind of thing.
They're pretty ludicrous social situations, and they'll always like the biggest device they'll use is like Picard talking to like Data or Wesley. Wesley sucks, but
the worst goddamn
I was
character.
so mad at the like last season, like Wesley has like a whole episode where he's like a prophet to like Native Americans.
I hated that.
It was terrible.
So bad.
There's so many like just like things wrong, like politically wrong with that episode, but like
the whole Native American colony.
Yeah.
Which we have to remove, and then White Savior Picard is gonna fix it, but then like Wesley is their prophet. I didn't pay a lot of attention to it. I couldn't stop rolling my eyes.
Yeah. Pinko kept telling me like, just please skip this. We've watched every single goddamn episode of this show.
I've skipped a couple episodes,
and we're 99% of the way through, and she's like, please just skip this up. It's brutal.
Unfortunately, that episode is like a necessary context for like half of Deep Space Nine, and like.
Oh yeah, you were telling me. And like Voyager, or was that you talking about the Maquis like coming out of that episode?
Yeah, basically Maquis, and then like so the lead character on Voyager is a Native American in the Maquis. But the reason, part of why that's so screwed up is it turns out that like the Star Trek had hired this like consultant on Native Americans, but it turned out he was like a white guy and a fraud, and like
Oh no!
Wait, what?
this, and so he had been like advising them for like 10 years, and then they found out that he was like a scam artist, basically.
Well, no wonder all their shit is jacked up. Like all of the Native American shit in there is this like I'm like super white, and I still am like, this looks like they took like a bunch of shit from different Native American cultures and just put them in a blender and then put it through like a filter, like a white people stereotype strainer. Like it makes me think of these like paintings that my dad has of like indigenous people with like headdresses and shit. Because like my parents are like the type of white people that think that Native Americans are our ancestors, and like it's always been a source of embarrassment for me.
Like, okay. I don't even know how that would work, but
well, okay, so like my dad's family, like someone far back. Maybe, I don't know. I did like the whole genealogy thing, and I'm pretty sure it's bullshit. But
yeah, everybody tries to claim that.
Yeah, at least they don't say they're Cherokee.
Right. That's the one that everybody says I'm 1/16 Cherokee.
Yeah, at least. But yeah, I mean, so would you say that the Federation is a socialist?
No.
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 Why?
No, not it. I mean, it's just like there's so many things wrong with it. Like, I mean, this is gonna be the whole thing. But first of all, they're incredibly hierarchical society.
Right.
Yes.
They say they aren't, and they say that they have, a meritocracy, which is like I guess mostly true. It is based on ability for the most part, but like it's still the case that like the people with a little bit more ability are allowed to send people with like a little bit less ability to their deaths, like at a whim. So it's not.
Yeah.
And then it's also not even really that meritocratic because people who like have family in Starfleet get ahead faster.
Yeah.
One thing, and then also humans are indisputably the most like dominant group.
Right.
Yes, and like other groups resent them for it, and nobody ever like deals with this.
I mean, race is sort of like so within humans, of course, like race is sort of this thing that's just not talked about at all.
No, it
Like-
doesn't exist. When we talk about racism, we do it through like the Bajoran Cardassian conflict, which I'm pretty sure is like Israel Palestine, but I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure. It feels that way.
It feels like it.
Because some of the best Deep Space Nine episodes are like they use a lot of time travel episodes to talk about race, and it's Deep Space Nine is much better at it than DNG or I mean there's an original series episode that tries to deal with racism where they have like, and this is talking about ham-fisted, like they're warring groups, and one of them is like black on their right side and white on their left side. Other one is white on the right side and black on the right side, and they hate each other and whatever. And it was like it's like, oh, they only hate each other because of their appearance. And it's like this total like 60s liberal nonsense about like just like tolerance or whatever. And like the episode ends with like they go to their planet and it's like destroyed because like their fighting has been so intense.
Oh, geez.
No. I mean, and I guess like on a more even, it is like a human. The Federation itself is like incredibly human centric.
Which I don't get how that is, because the humans came into the Federation, right?
No, they created it.
No, oh, I thought the Vulcans invited them into it.
No. The humans. So that's what Star Trek Enterprise talks about. So the way they
I hate that show, so I never watched it.
Oh yeah, so there was like the Vulcans had been like ruling Earth for like 100 years, basically, like subtly, and like we're trying to like prevent humans from like rising. So there was like a lot of resentment. So then like humans, and then it turns out like
I thought they were trying to keep humans from
controlling Vulcans. What?
I thought they were trying to keep humans from just destroying each other.
That's what they said publicly, but then you find out that it's actually just that they don't like humans.
Okay. Reasonable as fuck.
Do you know Star Trek Enterprise, what that is?
No.
Okay, I did see this when I was a kid. My dad really liked it. Like my parents would watch it all the time, but I haven't seen it since. It's supposed to be like right after Earth discovers warp power.
Okay.
So like the politics of like the humans have entered space and like they're dealing with their
Oh,
shit with the
okay.
Vulcans.
As they enter space, they start screwing up everything. They start like 2 intergalactic wars, or and then they provoke like the Klingons and the Romulans and the Vulcans and then there's the Vulcan and the Andorian war, and then then they have to go into this. They have this massive temporal Cold War plotline, which was really stupid. Which is like they're fighting people, I don't know, from like 2900, and then although they do have a good episode where they come back to Earth and it's been changed history so that the Nazis take over. So then they just spend the episode murking Nazis. That's a pretty
Okay. All right. Yeah. Well, that old one.
The only episode I remember is like a favorite Star Trek. Like every season every show has to have one episode where one of the Vulcans has their like mating thing.
Yeah,
They get real horny. But like this was the first one where they had a female Vulcan doing bar, and she's like, I don't know. It was just a whole episode of just this very hot woman being like a guy.
Traveling through space with the funky beats. Stopped at Pluto to cop some petrol. Met some Klingons and got our things on. Cruising warp 6 with Mr. Wiggles in the mix. Hendrix passing P, Star Child gave the fix. The saucer shook the heavens with the blooms and the blams. Because when we hit New York, Shazam. We dropping like a comet and this Vulcan tried to spot it. These Martians tried to do it, but knew they couldn't cop it. The others from a brother planet lands in the flesh from up in Sector 6, yes, sure.
It's such a human-centric organization that Starfleet is such a human-centric organization that their capital is literally Earth, which and that's so funny. And then everyone talks about like how all these people like voluntarily joined the Federation, but that's like so like clearly false. I think because the humans just like will build like a colony. They'll colonize like an entire solar system next to a group of people, and then they'll be like, "Oh, hey, do you guys want to join our federation now?" And I'm like, "Well, if we don't, you're just gonna like surround us, right?" I mean, that's basically what they do.
What choice do you have?
It's like the Bajorans, like when
they pressure the Bajorans.
Yeah, because it's like either you can go back to the Cardassians just like owning you constantly and just colonizing the shit out of you and torturing you, or you can join our federation.
Right.
And we could use your warp hole.
Yeah, and we can use the wormhole.
They want that too, and then also like at the beginning of Star Trek Insurrection, the beginning of the movie is them like basically like pressuring a society that just got warped to join the Federation because they've been losing so many people in the Dominion War that they were like, oh well, here's a planet of 500 million people, so that's going to be good for our army, basically. That's like the whole point. That's like, and then also the rest of that movie is about them like a Starfleet plan to basically ethnically cleanse a planet that like reaches to the highest parts of the Federation, and Picard, being the ethical guy, takes a stand against it. So that's like, and then you also start to find out about all these other the Federation is not some like benign group.
No.
And one thing I point out is like, look, they get into conflicts. The Federation gets into conflicts with, okay, let's see. They get into at the beginning, they get into like, not full war, but into like tense conflicts with like the Vulcans and Andorians. But then immediately as they enter space, they get into trouble with the Romulans, the Klingons, the Xindi, the Sphere Builders. And then as time goes on, they add to that like whatchamacallit, whatever. A bunch of other groups like, and then also like the Dominions, the Cardassians, the Borg, the Kazon, like a several hundred years war with the Klingons and the Romulans, and like 10 other different groups. Like they're only at peace, like they're at war, like at least Cold War 2 times as often as they are like peace.
Right. Yeah.
What I say is like, look, you can pretend that they're always being attacked in these situations, but if other societies aren't getting into all these wars and only the Federation is, like, why? It's the only common denominator. Like,
So like, this is gonna sound really basic, but like, so the people saying that Star Trek is like socialist are generally like, I don't know what's his name,
Luke Savage.
Luke Savage, is he like a Demsock?
Yeah, he's a funny guy.
So they kind of make me think of the people being like, we could have a socialist America,
Yeah.
But the third world is still going to be like providing cheap labor for us. And it's kind of like there's no poverty on Earth, but you still have like whole solar systems full of people that are like in terrible, awful circumstances.
And they also like use like prison labor to mine like dilithium, which they need.
They still have prison.
Yeah, they still have prisons.
People are going to jail all the time in that shit.
Yeah. They put you on a prison planet for life to mine dilithium if you break their rules.
I mean, theoretically, is resource accumulation part of the reason for like what would we call like the benevolent imperialism of the Federation? They never like
straight up say it, but they're constantly like, we need dilithium crystals.
Right. Yeah, they need labor, and they need basically kind of like, not to use this word, but like Lebensraum. Like one of their big things is like they try to like have as much of a buffer between themselves and like the Klingons basically and the Romulans. Yeah. So that like they get invaded, it's just like the shitty races they don't care about die, and then the core stays like safe. That's I think their main motivation, and also labor, and also like resources like dilithium and other stuff, and technology and weapons.
So it's essentially the same as any like 20th century and 21st century like globalist project,
right?
Or even like pre-globalism as such, but just like colonizer project.
But this is like what like my biggest like why I was never really drawn into democratic socialism as a movement is it always seems to kind of stop within like your borders.
Right.
It's not very international, and it's kind of like the same like their view of Star Trek being socialist. I'm trying to make Star Trek into something way bigger than it is, but
no, I mean it's very big to a whole lot of people.
Yeah, I love it. I'm kind of a Trekkie, but I mean I'm a Trekkie. I'm like I love it.
Yeah, you know a whole lot about it for not being a Trekkie.
I am a Trekkie basically. I mean, but I don't know. It's just I mean they're not like they're like definitely like the best place in like the Alpha Quadrant and Beta Quadrant to live, right? Like that's true, the Federation in Star Trek, but that doesn't mean they're like good.
Yeah, but like why are they the best place to live?
Right. And so that's the big question. I mean, part of it is because like they're not as explicitly like xenophobic. So the Klingons and the Romulans explicitly are like are explicitly racialist. And the humans are not in the same way. And like the Vulcans being among the first members meant that there was kind of like a civilizing influence on humans for a lot of it, I think. Mm-hmm. And some of the more noble, like some of the more like the widespread practice of like vegetarianism and the like disbelief in the death penalty, all that comes from like the Vulcans, basically.
Okay. See, this is again beyond my personal scope of Star Trek, but this is good to know.
Yeah, it's earlier, right? Like when the Vulcans came to Earth, like they had just concluded like a massive nuclear war.
Okay.
And so, well, first there was the eugenics wars, which began in 1992 or whatever, and then where the mutant superhumans took over, divided up the Earth, and then they just killed each other so much that like they collapsed, and then just like in the wake of like a nuclear apocalypse, this like drunk asshole Zefram Cochrane invents warp drive, and the Vulcans just are flying by at the time, and so then like they come to Earth, and then like they establish a presence, and then very quickly like the Vulcans kind of like it's not totally peaceful right away, but like the Vulcans very quickly establish kind of dominion over Earth.
Okay.
So they say like the Vulcans are like, we'll only exchange knowledge and technology, but we'll only do it if everybody does it at the same time. So they force all of the Earth's countries to create like a global trade council or something. So like basically force them to become unified, which I mean, fine, that's okay. But then they kept them like, they basically try to prevent humans from getting ahead of time. So, they had to like build warp on their own and all this stuff. They only had warp 1. And then but very slowly, surely like 100 years later or so, 75 years later, like that's when Star Trek Enterprise begins, where it's like they just invented warp 5 and they're like, they say, screw the Vulcans, and we're going to go out into space on our own for once. We're done just like this small scale space travel. And so then, and the Vulcans basically insist, they're like, okay, but you have to let us have one person on your ship and all this stuff. And then Captain Archer just goes out and just like causes chaos in the universe. And he's like, hi, he basically is like, hey, everybody, we're humans. We're like on your doorstep now. And so like they force galaxy, or not the whole quadrant to like know who humans are in the space of like 5 minutes.
Hi, we're here to and all humans are basically just like asshole Americans, which is interesting to me. Like I don't know, I always thought there's not a whole lot of like different human cultures.
Well, there are, but they just don't, because of the universal translator, you don't notice them. So
yeah, I guess
Picard is French, for example,
with a British accent.
Yeah, and in the original, in the TOS, you know, there's like a Soviet guy, and there's like you know, all over. That was one of Roddenberry's like liberal humanist things, was like, look, like the Soviets and Americans can get along and like rule space together. So that's kind of present there. But they have universal translators and like total globalization. So, you know,
we talked about. Can I divert just a little bit? And because the universal translator thing is just making me remember, we had a brief conversation about this like a couple of weeks ago or something about God damn, I'm forgetting what those aliens are called, but the ones who only speak in metaphor.
Yeah.
Oh, the Darmok episode.
The Darmok episode. I love that episode.
It's so
you
good.
Either love that episode or you hate that episode.
It's, so
love that.
It's good, but it's also like, so the premise of this episode is that there's this alien race who no one has been able to figure out how they communicate, like, or how to translate their language. The universal translator is useless, and it turns they speak in these very vague phrases that don't actually communicate very much information at all, unless you have a rich understanding of their culture, and then they're like metaphors to describe everyday tasks.
Somebody did a whole tweet thread about it. I don't know if it was you. I see a thread in my brain. It's like it was yungneocon. But somebody did a whole thing about like, how do you feel about this episode? And like,
oh, that was me. But
that was you.
But that wasn't a thread. That was like a conversation.
Yeah. Well, yeah. It was like a bunch of different people talking about like, would that work? Like a metaphor based language.
Yeah. Well, all languages are metaphor based, right? But the problem is that they have it so that the universal translator can like translate the meaning of nouns and like semantics.
Yeah.
They can't figure out the metaphor, but that's impossible. You would have to know that stuff ahead of time in order to get the.
Yeah. I mean, this is where you get to like willing suspension of disbelief kind of shit.
Well,
but I like that episode though. It's really, and it's also the basis for that meme. There's a several panel meme where it's Picard like giving the like completely like dumbfounded face to.
I don't think I know that.
Wait, yes,
like indecipherable gibberish, and then like and then Picard will just be like, "What?" Let me see if I can find it.
Yeah, you should send that to us after this.
Yeah.
So wait, what were you saying, Barto?
Oh,
I said your name. I'm sorry.
That's okay. I mean, I guess I was just asking if you thought that was like absolute, like, just. I mean, it's clever writing, which is fun, but is it like the most? I don't know. I can't imagine pigeonholing yourself in a language any more than only being able to communicate using things that have happened as your whole basis for language.
Well, we sort of do that in human language, right? I mean, words take on their meaning because of like specific historical context,
right?
And language is dead metaphor or whatever. So that part's not that. But the fact that it's like you can only communicate in these like overwrought specific historical metaphors is ridiculous.
Yeah, like it's full sentences that have like
Darmok and Jalad at Tanagra or whatever.
Yeah.
Yep.
So we covered human supremacy,
imperialism to a certain extent,
hierarchy. We have to talk about means of production.
Well, yeah, that's tied in with like the hierarchy part and the fact that like the Starfleet is like a military organization. That's another thing. So in the article that Luke cited, it said, "Oh, sure, Starfleet is a military organization, but it's also blah 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 blah." And I'm like, wait a minute, you can't just like cast that off to the side because it's their main function. Not only is it their main function, they're at war for like most of their either Cold Wars or short skirmishes or full on war for like most of their existence with everybody in the galaxy. And also just like they have a military hierarchy command structure where if your captain like is feeling like cranky, he can send you to your death. Like it's just like they don't have the death penalty, but like they can like just like use you as human shields basically.
Yeah. There must be like democratic like structures within it. I can tell. Right?
What?
There doesn't seem to be any democratic structure within this organization at all.
Not within Starfleet, there's no democracy, but the Federation is a representative electoral democracy.
Oh, yeah.
It's one that works by like, so every planet has like their own council, and then they like elect from there to the Federation Council. And so it's like an electoral representative republic.
So it's basically like what we have in the U.S.
It's similar. It's more kind of like
works better.
It's almost like Roman. I don't know.
I was just gonna say, yeah, it sounds like way more old school than.
Yeah. I mean, technically, I think people vote for like the president, so I think that does happen. But like, mostly like, because like the way you join the Federation is that your planet's government has to petition for it. So like, that's another thing is that like everything in their there's two things that like I really don't like about like the Prime Directive. One is that like their criteria for advancement is the warp drive. So even if you're a society that like could have invented the warp drive but like decided not to because like you would rather focus on other things, like they decide you're not advanced enough if you don't have it.
Right.
Yeah, they really look down on people who aren't like technologically at a certain point.
Well, it also seems it's decidedly human centric in the sense of like this was the point that like we decided that we were an advanced race.
I love the idea that like go fast is like the entry point to like the space society. Like, go fast.
It's like a minimum requirement for like being able to like do stuff. It makes sense, but there's no reason that if a society isn't like culturally like I don't want to say advanced because I don't like that terminology, but like there's no reason that they can't like share warp drive to people who are like already democratic, peaceful, and post-scarcity.
Your planet just doesn't have the shit that you need to create a warp drive.
Exactly. Like,
or like there's one episode where it's like a proto-Vulcan race.
Yeah.
And they accidentally reveal themselves to these people and they take one of the people onto the ship and explain all this shit to them. And the person's like, oh, okay, that makes sense to me now.
Yeah.
Like clearly they can handle it.
Right. And I mean, that's kind of the point. I think that's kind of one of the point of that episode is like, it kind of shows how kind of bogus the Prime Directive is. That's also Pamela Adlon and Ray Wise, two big Power Star character actors, that episode. But
I like that episode,
actually.
actually.
Totally right.
But and then so the other thing though is that their criteria for like a group of people negotiating with the Federation is the central political structure of a planet. Right, so they always say we don't interfere with other societies unless people ask us, but they don't mean people; they mean government, right?
Right.
And so even if like a civilian group asks them to intervene, they won't do it unless the government does.
Just like the Vulcan or the Romulans who want to like get away from the like repressive Romulan government, like they will not deal with these people.
Right. They and then so but and on Bajor, like whole groups of people didn't want to join, and so so there's this whole weird built-in assumption that like governments legitimately represent their people. B, they're the only way to legitimately represent their people. And C, that like if they can make decisions for their people, even if they don't want them, and then the Federation will enforce it. And then here's the most screwed up part, though, is that if your government decides to do that for you and like make you join the Federation, and then you try to leave, they don't let you. So that's I think the big giveaway, right? Is like the Maquis is like these political groups made these decisions for these people. And then they're like, okay, well, we want to leave. And then they're like, okay, well, then we're going to like massacre all you people. And I mean, it's just like,
yeah, very, very socialist.
And they gave, so like, whether or not you can get accepted to the Federation depends on like your centralized political structure. But then like they also will give up your planet against your will, and they won't let you leave. Right. So it's just like, that's ridiculous. That's not a democracy.
Why would you join this organization? Like, what benefit? I mean, I guess it's like a military that can protect you from other
military and access to a lot of resources.
And I guess they've just surrounded you. So what choice do you have?
That's the big question. There's actually I watched a YouTube series where a guy does several series on all the advantages and disadvantages of joining the Federation. The benefits slightly exceed the cost. That's his argument.
Okay. Yeah. Cool.
Okay, so another thing I want to bring up is gender equality in space. So something I think is really funny that I've noticed throughout. First of all, the men can all look like complete schlubs, and the women are all these like perfectly trim, beautiful women. And I noticed that in TNG, almost like more than half of the admirals are women, and I think it's kind of this way for them to put women in powerful positions without actually making them central characters.
Yeah.
So they can kind of like congratulate, like TNG especially spends a lot of time congratulating itself for being like gender equal without actually ever being gender equal. And then like there's no queer people there at all.
No, yeah, Star Trek is not a queer
although
universe.
I have been told that like some of the actors in that show tried really hard to get some like LGBTQ representation. Like what?
Actually, Gene Roddenberry, towards the end of his life, he felt really bad about that. And so he's actually started to write a LGBT character, and then he died, and the studio scrapped it. So that's like a weird little subplot. But starting in DS9, they start to have more.
So maybe I'll catch some of this.
Yeah.
So like there's like the episode where there's the race of people who have no gender.
Yeah.
Will sort of falls in love with one, but like the actor or the actress is a woman. Apparently, what's his name who plays Will Riker pulled for the actress to be a man, like an actor, to try and like make it a little more.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
There's an infuriating exchange though. I can't stand it where he's like, I don't know what to call you if I can't call you a she or a he. And she's like, or they really are like, well, we have a pronoun, but it doesn't exist in your language. And the whole time I'm like, it's they, them. Like, this is a thing. This exists in English.
Yeah.
I don't know if it existed like in the 90s when it was.
Definitely, it's existed for
but like
at
the
least
singular
hundreds
they
of years.
has been around for a long ass time.
But also like there's that, you know, they're always like Star Trek is always like progressive for like the liberal sentiment at its time. That's true, but it becomes really dated really quickly because of that. Like so, but even so, that you know, there's that episode where Data has a kid, and he's like, I let my kid choose their own gender, and like on the first that's actually like
from boy or girl,
but like he has to, but they have to choose, right? That but they have to choose, right? I don't know.
There was some, I can't remember what series it was. There's like a race of people who have a third gender that's necessary for mating, but that third gender is like really like subjugated.
Yeah, that's an Enterprise.
That's an Enterprise. Man, this is like reaching back into my memory. Like I was probably in middle school when I was watching that show.
That one's actually a little bit better because like this guy basically mutinies to like stand up for their rights in their population, but Archer like wants basically like technology from these people, so he's like, no, you can't. This is before the Prime Directive, and so he's like, no, you can't intervene. Like, what do you do? How do you? He basically has this line like, how do you know it's right? How do you know like equality is right for them? Basically.
Oh, cool.
Cool.
The guy's like, I don't know, maybe because this person like learned to like read and compose music in under 3 days, but is kept around as like a sex toy basically on their home planet. Like, I don't know, it seems kind of screwed up to me that we want to do business with these people.
Well, that same sort of weird. It's not. Well, they have that episode where the woman is like born, or she's kept in a pod or something for her whole life until she goes to marry. I forget who any of these species or characters were, because this is pretty early on in TNG. But yeah, there's this whole idea of like, this is really fucked up. This whole woman's life has been leading to be, essentially a slave to this person, to her mate. And there's this whole like, well, maybe that's how it should be.
She's like a princess kind of thing, or she was like raised to like be like a diplomatic marriage.
Yeah.
And that's the one. Wait, is that the same one where she turns out to be like a shapeshifter, or is that a different one?
No, that's a different one, but similar because it's like a female character who was like raised her whole life to be a diplomat. They love the royal aristocratic kind of thing.
Yeah,
like they love that plot line in Star Trek, which is another mark against it.
There's also one the matriarchal society where Riker goes and has to argue for the rights of men or whatever. Like there's there is the little sub society that's growing on the sidelines of this, and they essentially like have to agree that this should probably be wiped out. This one that's has a more gender equality lifestyle, and but they have to go with the prime directive and say it's fine if you wipe them out.
There's a particular race. Again, I can't remember what series it was. It's only mentioned in passing, but they have bred all their females to have the intelligence of like base animals.
Whoa, what?
Yeah, like none of their females are basically like pets. They're like dogs. Like they don't have upper intelligence like humans do.
Wait, what? Which is that TNG?
No, it's not TNG. I can't remember what it is. I want to say it's like Enterprise or something. I'm trying to Google it and I can't find it. But I just remember being like mentioned in passing, like, oh, your women are intelligent. We got rid of that a long time ago. We've made ours to be.
Wait, I think that's you're thinking about the Ferengi.
It wasn't the Ferengi. It was like they're like cat people or something.
Oh, I don't remember that.
I have to find it. I could be talking about my ass, but I'm pretty sure because I remember being like really disturbed by the whole idea of it. Is it the Kaitan?
I don't know. I don't remember that one.
I don't know. It's in Memory Alpha somewhere. I'm sure of it. I've spent an embarrassing amount of time reading Memory Alpha.
You have to use it to like watch the show because so easy to miss all these like stupid esoteric things. So like. You have to use it.
Real quick, the Ferengi got brought up, which I actually think is like one of those huge.
Are they anti-Semitic stereotypes?
Yeah, well,
I feel like they're like this is bad.
They're supposed to be capitalists.
Yeah, but they're also like they have big noses and are obsessed with money. And...
Yeah, but like the most explicit reference to Jews in Star Trek are actually the Vulcans.
Yeah, well, I mean, a lot of that.
Jewish, and like the whole "live long and prosper" symbol is actually like a rabbinical thing, and like.
Oh, really?
Beyond the maybe anti-Semitic thing that I see posited every once in a while, but watching the show, I'm not sure. Pinko brought up the point the other night that if the goblins in the Harry Potter movies are definitely anti-Semitic tropes, then probably the Ferengi are too. But the other weird thing that is the overt, I guess, speciesism or whatever. Is it still racism when it's talking about Ferengis? But that exists when all essentially humans talk about Ferengi at all. There's, I mean, they're getting into it pretty deeply in Deep Space Nine in just the first like 10 episodes that we've watched. But it seems to like go against this entire idea that like the people of the Federation have like transcended any sort of just like base biases.
And that's what DS9's like all about. Because also like with the Odo, you know, the shapeshifter.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, like basically like this is like shows actually how gripped by prejudice people still are.
Okay.
And with both the shapeshifters and the Ferengi in DS9, there's this kind of like, you know, kind of typical plot where they're just like, oh, maybe we're not so different after all, like that.
There's been a couple of those already.
And that's where it kind of ends. Is like in like, you know, oh, the Ferengi are gonna be anyway. There's a I don't know. There's a kind of point though where in DS9, like the Ferengi guy Quark says he says like, look, like you're right that we're like humans used to be, and that we're like mercantile and exploitative, and like we like you know, all we care about is making money. But like we've never had a period of war in our history, and we never like killed people, and we've never like had to like have all these like horrible. We didn't have to have a nuclear war in order to become like a spacefaring civilization. So like I don't know. There's kind of like a weird kind of like message there. I don't know, where it's like humans talk down to everybody else, where even like at their basest, like they're much worse than everybody else. It's kind of
yeah. I mean, so I guess one of the bigger questions then is, how did the Ferengi manage that at all? Like, how do you like do capitalism, especially across like a universe without a war?
They're like a weird. Oh, sorry. Finish and then I'll say my thing.
I mean, because they literally just buy their way out of it. That's like the whole thing. And you also find out that they used to be like a peaceful and like communal and egalitarian race, and then they only became like into profit later.
Oh, okay.
You learn. So, because at one point, like Wallace Shawn's character, is like the chief Ferengi. He like gets like reverted back to how Ferengi used to be, and then he becomes like an egalitarian and like a feminist and like all these like funny things. I don't know. There's like this really weird implication. I don't know. The Ferengi were supposed to be the new villain of TNG because Roddenberry wanted to comment on capitalism because it was the 80s, as you were saying.
Yeah.
But everybody thought they were ridiculous. So
they are ridiculous.
Drop them basically. I don't know.
I mean, they kind of show up though. They never really get fully, like they show up in Voyager in like a comical way.
Yeah, they become a butt of a lot of jokes.
Yeah.
No, I mean, which is fine. I mean, it's cool, I guess, that like the characters who are just sort of like the base like capitalist, you know, monsters are the butt of jokes in a show, and like that's great. You know, again, one of the reasons why Star Trek is good and like fun to watch, but they're not a compelling villain.
Yeah,
I don't like their social structure is so weird to me because it kind of seems like do they have different like families or clans that are basically like a corporation?
Yeah.
Like what is a Grand Negus?
He's like their CEO of the Ferengi, basically.
Yeah, but it's like passed down along hereditary lines, kind of.
Semi-hereditary, but the council can like usurp it.
Yeah. So the council's kind of like a board of directors.
Literally is.
Yeah. So it's like they're like heavily capitalist, but also like you're being a capitalist for like your government.
Yeah. Well, the government is just a corporation, though.
Yeah.
So it's just like, it's like ANCAP.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say, I mean, it's like the logical result of like anarcho-capitalism.
It's really, I don't know.
I think I'm wrong about this race of people with like less than intelligent. I swear I remember it. I swear I'm gonna find this, but where the females are like animals or something.
You're just making stuff up
I swear
on the
I
internet.
remember this.
Also, the Ferengi guy, you become the chief Ferengi guy because by like owning the most stuff, right? So like that's why they're the whatever. So they're not earning money for him. He just actually owns the most stuff. So it's kind of like he's like the chief. Like
Well,
I mean, he's just a richest person.
I guess he was tricking him in like the first season of DS9. They make Quark Grand Nagus because of his like prowess and intelligence by like setting up shop next to a wormhole. But I guess that was actually just a test.
Mm-hmm.
I think about it.
Did Ferengi have a planet?
Yeah, Ferenginar.
Ferenginar. Are there like streets and shit? Because I was thinking about
well, if they're all like one corporation, like
yeah, I guess it's beneficial to make streets and stuff. I was thinking about that. There's that really kind of classic 4chan post where it's like me waking up in my libertarian world, where it's just like jokes like
Liberty World problems and Reddit.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
it'll be like stories where like they have to like the Mick police come and I have to pay 5 Bitcoin to have them. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
My boss paid me tokens from his shop, and I have to shop in the company store. And
someone stole my shoes. I ran into a policeman, but he was not in my network, and so he wouldn't, come and help me. I cut my feet on the road because there's no one taking care of the roads anymore. I mean, that's sort of what I imagine the Ferengi planet is. Ferengar, is that what you said?
Ferenginar
is like, but I guess if there's only one company, then it probably takes care of itself pretty well.
You only ever see houses and you see like government buildings, and that's all you ever see on Ferenginar.
Okay.
And you get government services you have to pay every time. It's really funny.
Okay, cool.
Man.
Great.
Enter someone's house.
I feel that way now.
Yeah.
I have to pay for a background check to get a government job. I'm pretty pissed about it.
Yeah, that's nice.
$65, man, for like it's 1 month actually.
Brutal.
It's a 1 month summer teaching job. I might not even do it. It's not even worth it.
Okay. So we got way off track, but that's okay. We've covered like basically human centrism, imperialism. What else did we get?
We're going to talk about means of production. I don't think we got too deep into it. But
oh yeah, means of production.
We replicators.
I'm gonna grab a beer from my fridge. 1 second.
Grab a beer.
I actually kind of want to grab another rum.
If I have one.
Yeah, I don't know if you can tell that I'm trying to have.
Communicator check 1 2 1 2. This is Bones McCoy on the line to Sulu. See the bullshit, the boy factor 1. Check your tricorder, set your face at a stun.
Oh baby, you can catch me at John B with the paper.
What's the next? What?
Can we talk about how disturbing it is that you can apparently replicate live animals on the replicator? There was just an episode where they're eating the live grubs out of the replicator in DS9, and I'm pretty sure that in one of the TNG episodes, there's like a bunch of puppies in the school, and I think that they replicated them.
Well, and Data has a cat, right? That's from the replicator.
They never say that he replicated the cat. Okay, the ethical implications of being able to create animals, and then what if you don't want them anymore? Can you put them back and recycle them in the replicator? No?
I think you could. Wait, I didn't know they replicated the animals though. I missed that.
But they absolutely replicated those grubs.
The grubs, yeah. But grubs aren't that smart. You can't replicate like intelligent beings with replicate.
They're like alive. They're moving.
Yeah, but I think they make an offhand comment about how like it's like not the same or something.
Okay.
No, he said it's really good.
So, no, yeah, I think he was into the grub, but we don't. Okay, I assumed that Data's cat came from a replicator. You think no?
I don't think you can replicate smart beings, but maybe I'm wrong.
Well,
Where do you draw the line at smart?
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, what is smart? But okay, I mean that would actually really cool my jets a little bit. knowing that like we're not replicating pets for like little kids on the Enterprise who then get bored of them in 2 weeks and then throw them in the replicator
Do you
recycling
remember
bin.
the Q episode where there's a girl who like joins the ship and then it turns out that she's part of the Q continuum?
Yeah.
You know, and like she comes into her quarters and it's full of puppies and she's like, "Oh no, you guys gotta go back," and then just disappears all the puppies.
Oh yeah.
Q is fun, and then Q also at one point like conjures these like sexy women for Riker, and then disappears them again.
Well, it gives them to Worf, who is not.
And then gives them to Warp, and they're just like, whatever. This is terrifying.
Well, Q is, an all-powerful being or whatever.
Q is a fucked up ass character, and actually, I kind of hate characters like that because I think that an all-powerful character gets a little boring.
Yeah.
I'm a staunch Q apologist.
I hate Q. He's the worst
I like
character.
Q, actually.
Yeah.
He's like
The whole point is that you learn that Q is like actually looking out for humans the whole time, kind of.
Kinda.
Yeah.
But like because he just finds them kind of interesting. He looks at them like pets.
If Q hadn't introduced them to the Borg in that early TNG episode, they would have all died. The Borg would have destroyed the Federation.
Because it would have been unprepared for the Borg eventually. Yeah,
Yeah.
true.
It was already on its way. That's what you learn that later. And so he saved them that time. And then also at the end of the last episode of Star Trek, All Good Things, where Picard's in multiple timelines, you find out that Q basically helped Picard cheat. And that the Q were going to wipe humans out. But
right. Yep. But our Q is a big fan of humans and fucking charming. I'm sorry, like the bringing a mariachi band onto the deck of the Enterprise is much needed, like lightheartedness that many of them don't have.
I do think that him giving Data the moment of laughter was like one of the sweetest things in the whole show.
Right.
But in general, he's not my favorite character.
and in Voyager, he does funny things too, like
Oh yeah, he's great in Voyager.
because like one Q wants to like kill himself, and that's a whole plot line, and then like yeah, and then like then there's another, I don't know, he like has like he tries to get Janeway to like have his kid, and then like she doesn't want to, and then like there's like a civil war among the Q, and then like I don't know, he also like makes Janeway the god mother of his like all-powerful kid. And it's like there's all these like really funny.
It's weird that Janeway is the one that he went to for like.
Well, apparently he asked the car or something and didn't like, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
Comment on it. He's like, I even like the car. I don't know. But I like Q.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's fun. I don't know. Yeah,
Okay.
and he gives a shit. That's one. He gives a shit without like being heavy-handed about how much of shit he gives. Picard gives a shit too, but he's letting you know the whole time that he gives a shit, and it gets a little old. And I
Don't
like.
talk shit on Picard.
I
Picard is
like
daddy,
him.
and I love him.
He's a great space papa, but yeah, he doesn't ever let you forget that he's space papa.
Okay, so the other thing that I think that I always want to address with Star Trek is like so many of the like species seem to be like racial stereotypes.
Yeah.
Like one of the early TNG ones are real brutal. They meet this it's super Orientalist. It's like
Oh
super Orientalist. I can't talk. It's like this group of they're all black and they're all like real built actors and they're wearing these like sparkly like harem pant things and they all are like in a line and like the other dude is the main dude's like walking down like some kind of like pharaoh and they're real fucking it's like the Hotep race. They're real fucking sexist against the like what's her name, the security officer who dies like real early.
Yeah.
What's her name?
I forget. Her name is.
Tasha.
Yeah, Tasha Yar.
Tasha Yar, yeah. Like that is the most racist fucking episode of that show. Holy shit.
That episode's really bad, but
Yeah.
That first season is just kind
Yeah,
of rough.
the first and last season of that show are brutal.
Oh, I like the last season.
What? Do you like the episode where she falls in love with Ghost?
No, that was silly. But seven has some good ones. Season 7 has has some ones I like. First of all Good Things is a great episode, the finale.
Yeah, we were split on that. I liked it. I
I
didn't.
love that episode.
I was just ready to move on to another series at that point.
Well, it's such a like sweet episode. I also saw it when I was a kid before I ever saw the rest of TNG.
Oh.
Okay.
I just like that episode, but because it's just all fan service. It's just like one like I don't know, love letter to fans, quote unquote.
Yeah, I mean it's fun because like you get you're dealing with all the best characters in a little more intimately. Like when you go to the future, you have Geordi and Data and Picard, and really, who else do you need? And it's beautiful. And then you go to the past, and we have O'Brien, who just like slips out of the
You
series.
love O'Brien.
O'Brien's great. He's
You
fine.
love him.
9. O'Brien moves to DS9. That's why.
Yeah, he was so. Bardo was so stoked when we started watching DS9 and O'Brien was in it.
Wait, did they ever say that in TNG? Because I felt like he was.
Where he docks at they dock at DS9.
Yeah, they go there and then he's just gone.
Yeah, because he was a side character, but fans loved him, so then they like kept him.
Yeah, I mean, he's cool. I like that they kept the tradition of like Scots Irish transporter operators.
Yeah, it's good.
But O'Brien, like, there is one of the like jokes in every episode. The show writers just torture him. Like,
Yeah.
Every episode is always horrible. It's always like it's like he gets like has to like force to live like a life of 70 years in like a prison and to spend like 1 minute and like yes, it's always horrible. Like he like choose between his like daughter. I don't know. He does all these like horrible things. They always
There's one where he gets like abducted by like a ghost person who was like sentenced to live on a planet as like a punishment, and they like take over his body.
yeah, in TNG. Yeah.
He's like holding everybody in 10 Forward hostage, including his wife and child. It's terrible.
In DS9 though, one episode he gets into a fight with Worf because Worf crosses a picket line.
Oh, nice.
No way.
I can't wait for this episode.
Wow.
Wait,
Worf
hates
quoting Marx. It's a really good episode. But you know, there's like one part where like a Frankie character picks up a pad and he starts saying like workers of the world unite, you have nothing to lose but your chains. It's so good. But
Wait, he really says that?
yeah.
Oh my god.
And then
Worf is a fucking scab. Of all people.
Worf is a scab. That's
No
what,
honor. Well, that's what happens when you're raised by humans.
I think so. Well, I think the Klingons are pretty anti-labor too.
Yeah, Klingons are a problematic race all over the place.
Yeah.
They're bad.
I mean, at some level, okay, this is another thing. So I decided after we spoke yesterday and thought like this is something we should do. I thought, well, maybe I should read a little bit. And so I read a couple of like little papers on like queer theory and Star Trek and like race and imperialism and Star Trek and shit like that. And one of the things that they all got back to was Worf and Klingons in general as like this like hyper virile, hyper masculine, race that is ostensibly, supposed to depict black men, and they're like written as such, and like just how kind of fucked up, this character that we're supposed to really like, because Worf is like charming and nice through like 90% of it, except when he like talks about women at all.
I can never figure out like Klingons because like half the episodes they're very like noble and considerate and like very nice and kind of, I mean, they have this like real sense of duty and honor, and they're almost like they're like goody two shoe squares. And then the other half of the episodes, they're just like these like animals that just want to fight and fuck, and that's it.
That's Roddenberry's point, though, right? So every enemy in Star Trek is supposed to represent a bad side of the Federation, right?
Okay.
So the Klingons are like militarism and like bluster. The Romulans is xenophobia. The Borg are like assimilation, imperialism, and the Dominion is like the Borg are like colonialism, and Dominion is like imperialism. So the Dominion, like, they preemptively try to take places over to like secure themselves, where the Borg literally just absorb people and like their own against. Everyone says, "Oh, the Borg are like the left or whatever," but that's wrong. They missed.
Yeah, my parents always told me that the Borg were an allegory for the USSR.
But it doesn't work. It doesn't work because they dropped the fact that like, originally they were like a horizontal whatever parallel processing computer.
But then they have
whatever.
a queen.
They have a queen, and they have all this other stuff. So Borg are not the left, but they are like colonialism. Like they're because, and they draw this line explicitly because in DS9, one of the Maquis guys says, he says, "You guys are just like the Borg. All the Federation does is absorb people and make it their own. Except unlike the Borg, you guys pretend that you're doing something else. You pretend that it's like a benefit for you. Whereas the Borg just come in and say, we're going to kill you and assimilate you." So it's like, at least like the Borg are honest. Like the Federation is just the Borg, but they lie. Like that's like the Maquis criticism of the Federation. And
I love the Maquis.
It's basically true, right? And he says to Cisco, the captain, he's basically like, look, only reason you hate us so much is because we're the only people who said no to your bullshit.
Yeah.
So that's
the whole like Maquis Bajoran plotline is like one of my favorite things. And the Borg and the Bajor are like my favorites in the whole series.
The Borg are the villains, I think, of the show because they're just like maybe in some of the best in Star Trek in like the world because like they're just so like monstrous and powerful and so like inhuman and they rely so heavily on body horror.
Yeah, the body horror is a big fact, especially like the things in the eye sockets. Like that's real Spanish.
And these like probes going into you. I don't know
when they have the babies in the incubators is a real good.
With the things, yeah. The Klingons are weird because the Klingons are they strictly adhere to an honor code, but they're a warrior culture. So like that's kind of like their.
The Borg have an honor code?
No, the Klingons. The Klingons.
Oh, the Klingons.
Yeah. The Klingons are weird because they're just like they're like an honor culture. They're like militaristic and all they care about is honor. But also, one thing they find out later is that like Worf has like misrepresented the Klingon basically because Worf like has something to prove because he wasn't raised Klingon.
He like fetishizes them because he like misses them.
So he goes extra, right? But then like among the actual Klingons, you find that they're basically not like all they do is like laugh and like pranks on each other and like whatever. Like so that's I think another big thing.
Yeah, that's. I mean, I guess that's like where I was like, why are like half the time they're real honorable, and noble, and then half the time they're like bloodlust and like sex. And I think, I mean, it's like you're seeing them through Worf's eyes, and then sometimes you see them through Riker's eyes because like Riker has to go do that cultural exchange with them, and like he's laughing with them, and they're all like, "Oh, we didn't expect you to have a sense of humor," and he's like, "I didn't expect you to have a sense of humor," like that whole thing.
Yeah,
and then you have the what are they? The whatever sisters. I always think of it as the Duhas sisters, but that's actually a Rammstein song, and not. It's
it's not the Duhas.
The two.
House of
what?
House of Duras.
Duras, yeah. I love them. One of my favorite things. First of all, they're fucking queens. They're amazing. They like eat men for breakfast, and I love it. But also, like, they will wear full fucking body armor and still have their tits out, which is so cool to me. Like every inch of their skin can be covered except for their tits and their faces because they know they got good tits. I love them. But yeah, so like they're like the opposite of Worf. Like they're like almost like like if the Klingon culture has like two opposing sides, like Worf is on one end and the Duras sisters are the other end.
And that's why they're on the verge of civil war. But
Yeah.
not that because the Klingons are definitely racialized, and it's actors of color who play the Klingons. But Roddenberry meant them as the Soviet Union, basically.
Really? Because they seem like every bad stereotype. Well, not even bad. Like every like weird stereotype that white people have about black people. Like they either see them as like these like noble, fighting against oppression type people, or like animals. And like the Duras sisters can be that like sort of oversexed animalistic stereotype, and then Worf can be like the noble savage kind of stereotype.
Yeah, I think it's true, but I think that they're like sort of because have you guys seen the movie Undiscovered Country?
No, I don't think so.
It makes this very, very explicit. Like the tagline for like that movie is "The wall comes down in space."
Oh,
And the Klingons literally have a Siberian style gulag called Rurapente, and like their like moon blows up, and then like so they're forced to sign this like peace treaty, and like the undiscovered country is like all about them like the elements of society who are trying to prevent peace from happening, and Kirk like comes to like change his prejudices against the Klingons. Like Roddenberry very strongly meant that as like a Cold War metaphor when the show first started.
Okay.
Yeah,
that's really interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess they do have a lot of religious stuff that almost seems sort of like Slavic.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe.
Yeah, I can see that.
Like from like a really bad, like poorly informed sort of way, but
they were like the stereotype of like the hulking Soviet Union that's like super militaristic.
Yeah.
Okay.
One of the first things, but that by like 1980 or whatever, 88 or whatever, that was like less relevant. So the became just like, as you're saying, like basically like tribal honor and culture. It's a weird shift. I don't know. Because Roddenberry was trying to make this like broader point, this like liberal humanist point. I was saying earlier, like, oh look, if the Soviet Union and the U.S. get along, like you can conquer the stars. Like that was his like thing. Roddenberry was like this very liberal humanist type. He's like, he like had this like tolerate everybody thing. Like I don't know. That was his like worldview, but it doesn't translate well because he also is just like full of stereotypes and is like very horny. I don't know.
Oh fuck. Okay, this totally shifts this whole paradigm of how I'm going to deal with the Klingon in the future, I guess. Weird. Because again, going through all these, and I just like scanned everything because I'm not going to read like 8 PhD papers on Star Trek. But
he found one yesterday. He was like, I found a really good paper about neoliberalism in Star Trek, and it's 60 pages long.
I got through I read probably 30 of that one.
Man, where did they go to college? Like, I never was given an opportunity to write shit like that. It would have been great.
But yeah, they all of them were like, the Klingons are racist. That was.
That's true. I think that is true too, though, because and there's an episode where they go back in time. Oh, they don't go back in time. It's sort of a fantasy story in DS9, and so all of the actors are instead are just like humans on Earth from like the 1950s.
Okay. So
Klingon, Michael Dorn, Klingon's actor, he's like a black baseball player who if these characters are supposed to be like who they are in the past, like who they would be now, so he's a black baseball player who is like very good, but like is excluded from baseball.
Okay.
And he's like, that whole episode is about race. So the premise of the episode is that Disco is a science fiction writer, and he writes a story in which there's a black lead character on a starship, Disco, basically, and the publisher won't publish it because it has a black lead character, and so the whole episode is about that. That's a very famous episode. Actually, that's one of the best episodes. I love that episode.
This is DS9.
Yeah, it's at the end of DS9. part of why I like the episode 2 is that it sort of implies that all of Star Trek actually is just like made of sci-fi. I don't know. You have to see it to see what I mean.
It gets a little meta, is what you're saying.
Incredibly meta. It's like almost a critique. It's almost a critique of the rest of Star Trek.
Okay, yeah, I'm fucking jazzed to get through DS9, just because it, again, like what you're saying, it seems like it's a liberal, like a humanist critique that is like valid in like the couple of years that it's going, and then becomes really super irrelevant again, like 10 years later. And so have you watched any of the new Star Trek?
The remakes, the reboots?
No, I mean like the thing that they have going on right now. I don't remember what it's called.
Well, Discovery. Yeah.
Articles
about Discovery.
Do you like it?
I like it, and I like it for the exact reasons that the people in current events don't like it, or current affairs don't like it. They see it as like this portrayal of this like Roddenberry vision of like this, and this like cheeky, like humanistic, socialist Star Trek. And my argument is like, no, actually, it's like the fulfillment, because it's like it's arguing, like what it's arguing in that show is that basically, if you allow Trumpism, is kind of their argument. If you allow xenophobia and nationalism to infect your republic, then you're just going to completely compromise everything, and you're just going to destroy yourselves.
Uh-huh.
So it's just like that's like the lesson it's actually played up incredibly explicitly in the series, because the evil universe is like a very big plot point of it. So, in the evil universe, the Federation is a xenophobic, basically Nazi republic, driven by explicit human supremacy and mass, like racialized slavery and all this stuff. So that's like a huge plot point. So Star Trek Discovery is like basically like underneath this noble Federation is the capacity for immense violence and for genocide and for racism and for xenophobia and for nationalism. And if you let that take over, like you destroy everything that actually matters. And my theory is that Luke and them didn't like it for precisely this reason, because they said that, but my sort of subjectivist, my like psychological is that like, because Discovery basically shows what we're talking about here, which is that like the liberal humanistic Federation is actually sustained by a form of imperialism and racism. This is exactly the critique people make of social democracy of the kind that they like.
Right. So
they don't like that because they don't want to admit that their sort of Scandinavian liberal republic socialism does require third world extractivism. Like, I don't know. That's my own Freudian reading.
No, I think it's a good take, and I think it really kind of like wraps up, like not wraps up, but like kind of condenses everything we were just talking about into like a good solid point.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and again, like what you said, Luke Savage. I don't know. Luke Savage probably.
I like him in a lot of ways, but he's wrong on this.
He's fine, whatever.
Wrong about Star Trek.
But he probably has like 20,000 followers or whatever. But he got back to you when you were like, well, no, you're wrong, dude. Like, and it's because like that does touch this. It touches this like little nerve of like, wait.
Man, I hope he listens to our podcast and yells at us.
I doubt it. But there's this. It touches this little nerve of like, wait, maybe there is something wrong with this. Very like we're not. I mean, I think of social democracy is like the tiptoeing centrism of like leftism or the world.
I mean, like social democracy is like the center if you were to do global politics.
Yeah, and
about global politics, yeah.
But and it's Well, I mean, you touched the nerve, and that's beautiful. I mean, we're running. We're like at probably hour 15 or something like that. What do you have any other things that you're like?
No, I don't have anything to do. But as long as you want or don't want to keep talking, I'm basically.
No, I mean,
I've run out of things to say about Star Trek.
I mean, I could keep going, but there's, I don't know. This is also a thing that I've sort of thought of that would be like I think a fun continuing conversation is just like Star Trek, because I'm just discovering this universe.
I think this could be a thing where like we do like random extra episodes that are just Star Trek.
Yeah,
Or like whatever we're watching on TV, which is weird because we don't have cable, so it's whatever's on Netflix.
Wait, what did you say?
Specific episodes, it could work. Like
Specific episodes.
I think that the actual political critique here is actually important, though, as to why this is, because I think a lot of people have this confusion, and there's this whole idea that like because they're post-scarcity in Star Trek that they're socialist,
right?
But that doesn't
They're
work.
not even post-scarcity because they're always scrounging for dilithium.
That's like dilithium and a couple other things or whatever, but food, medicine, healthcare, and so
there's a whole plot line, a whole episode where there's a race of people who keep another race of people subjugated based on like a need for medicine that's actually a drug they're addicted to.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, but those people aren't part of the Federation. And that's what I said to Luke. I said, look, by any standard or metric, the post-scarcity liberal republic displayed in Star Trek is a million times better than the world we have today. Like, saying it's like better doesn't prove anything. Like, clearly we would rather live in that world than this world.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean it's socialist. Socialist doesn't just mean like good. And also just like if you have a hierarchical society governed by a military body in which you advance in a strict hierarchy that depends on scarcity of dilithium and restrictions of access to the means of production, and which is unaccountable to people, and which can like sacrifice them politically on the altar of politics, and which constantly imperializes other societies and uses prison labor and enslaves sentient photonic beings. That's a whole other set. So,
that's a whole voyage thing.
If you have that society, that's not a socialist society. That's like a capitalist society that gives everybody food. Like it's not. I don't know. It's not even capitalist. It's almost
state capitalism.
Yeah, it's weird. It's like feudal.
Space capitalism.
It is. I mean,
like you could even make arguments like under feudal. Like I've heard a lot of historians argue under feudal governments, people at least were fed.
Yeah, you're given guaranteed food and water and housing.
You were the people who were producing the food for the Lord, so he wanted you to fucking eat.
Yeah, because he needed you.
And you had like a gajillion feast days.
And you had
time off.
And you had all that stuff. Yeah, Star Trek is basically like
space feudalism
in space. And I don't mean that as an insult, because I love the show, and there are elements of an emancipatory narrative in Star Trek.
No, I fucking love it. Like, I think that the Bajoran plotline, again, like, I mean, I can't help seeing it as, like, an allegory for the struggle of Palestinians. Just because it's the people who are being colonized, and then there's another government getting involved who are kind of, like, not being really good about it.
They're using terrorism.
What?
The Bajorans use terrorism, so it's explicit.
Yeah, they use terrorism, but, like, but there's a lot of like empathetic, humanizing, dealing with what the terrorists are.
The DS9 is indisputably pro-Bajoran.
Yeah, but like there's also like they deal with these terrorist groups, quote unquote terrorist groups, and then it comes out that like they're not actually trying to just kill a ton of people. They're just, they don't like the current order because they don't think it's going to work for everybody and it's not going to really free them. And honestly, it's like a more humanizing portrayal of the struggle of any colonized people than you get in the news media about real colonized people. So it's something that I'm sort of drawn to a little bit. But like,
and the Maquis are the same thing. The Maquis have the same point, right? You're like violent terrorist rebels, but like in Voyager, they get reintegrated into the team right away. And it very strongly humanizes them.
Well, not the whole Maquis, just that one little cell of Maquis.
Right, and the Maquis are like wiped out.
It's by necessity, though. Like, it's like, well, we're in, like, this other quadrant of space, and we're never going to see Earth again, so we might as well work together.
But I think that that's a more radical message than it sounds on its surface, because it's basically saying, and Kira makes the same argument in DS9. She says, look, we can't punish all the former terrorists. We have to include them in the government.
Yeah.
Like, and basically, I think this, I mean,
She does. I love her. Sorry.
And she's like a literal terrorist. She like literally bombed, civilian population. So there's no like whatever doubt here, whatever. Like she's like, but she's the good hero. I think it's a little bit more radical than it sounds, because basically that argument is like, look, like terrorism is arbitrary. It's not even a real designation.
Yeah, it's great because it's like, what is terrorism? Terrorism is people operating in a militaristic faction outside of the control of a state.
State, right.
It's like, I mean, anybody can be a terrorist as long as you're going against the state.
Right, and
and it depends on whether or not you win. Like the revolutionary first Americans, George Washington was a terrorist. If he had lost, he would be a terrorist. I mean, this is like a really basic argument that everybody makes, but like it's the point. Like, what is a terrorist?
But also like the fact that like they make, because the argument they're they don't go into the like, well, we agree with the support of your cause, but we don't agree with your means. They don't say that. They say,
no, they're like, you Cardassians tortured my father in front of my face. I'm gonna fucking kill one if I see one.
And their whole relationship was extractive. They had Bajor because they were trying to get these minerals. And the Cardassians, the great thing they do is they have all these things where they like personalize the Cardassians. So you start to hear all the lies that they were telling themselves, these ideological lies. They're like, we're here to actually civilize the Bajorans. Like, we're here because like we actually had like a paternalistic relationship with them. And these are like literally, straight out of the book, like the liberal justifications.
Yeah, it's cool because it's like how, I mean, getting back to the Palestinian-Israeli allegory, like, it's sort of humanizing them, not for the purpose of being like, these are people too and we should be sympathetic, but like, these are the lies that we as humans tell ourselves to like justify what we're doing to other people.
I like that.
Yeah, exactly.
And in Voyager, the message is like, look, if there's a bigger struggle going on, like,
because the Borg are gonna fucking kill us.
It could be like climate change, the Borg, whatever. Like, look, get the fuck over yourself, and like, that's where this that's like the true liberal humanist, like that's the good part of the liberal humanism of Star Trek, like where even it's corny, like that's like actually like where Roddenberry's vision was actually sort of like good, was in precisely this vision of like a unified human world that like works together to like end pollution and war and violence, and that we can do it, and that like we need to be like forgiving. I don't know. That's like this whole like that's actually the good part about Star Trek, the part that I like. But like that itself isn't like socialism. That's just like improvement.
This is humanitarianism. Like it's a really good humanist show.
Right.
And I mean, I hate people who say I'm a humanist.
Right. It's usually annoying.
But like, I mean, I am somebody who identifies with like my politics are what is good for people, like not just like society, but like for average people. So like, yeah, humanism, not a bad thing. I think humanism with socialism, but it's like humanism with class struggle sort of removed from it.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. Class struggle is totally removed.
Yeah, which is what makes it. I mean, if you want to make any single tweet worth of characters' point about why Star Trek isn't socialist, you could just be like, "There's no class struggle in Star Trek."
Class is just assumed away. But
yeah, like they say there's no poverty, and they never explain why there's no poverty. It's like we have replicators, like whatever. Like if we had replicators invented right now, you would still have to fight over the matter that you would have to put into a replicator.
Well, it actually is a point because the original series doesn't have replicators, or
really?
Enterprise doesn't either. So someone pointed this out they do actually become post-scarcity before replicators.
Okay.
But they don't really say how. Basically, the phoned-in explanation is like the Vulcans taught them how to be basically post-scarcity.
So we logicked and like held hands and kumbaya'd our way into post-scarcity.
Well, it was like humans had been so destroyed by this nuclear whatever that it's like everybody was equally suffering and poor now, and this like alien race comes along and shows us we're not alone in the universe. So humans like came together to like unify. A lot of people have said this in the past. Like I think there's some truth to this. Like the one thing that could actually unify the human species is if like we had an alien invasion, because we all have a common enemy, right? And nothing makes friends like enemies.
That's like Adam Curtis.
I just think that's like kind of true, and I'm sad.
Yeah, no, it's like one of the only things the only conspiracy theory that I really believe in.
Is what? Wait, which one?
Adam Curtis's Power of Nightmares, that like every like war that we fought has just been about like creating a single enemy for the American people to fight against.
Of course. Yeah. Conspiracy theory is just sort of true.
Yeah.
But I don't know. So the phone-in explanation is like, look, everybody is equally pouring out. Everybody is exhausted from killing each other, and aliens have just come in. So like, we're gonna confront these aliens as a group, and like they slowly. So then they do it very, very slowly, and the Vulcans like kind of are paternalistic and like require them to do certain things. Like, they won't give them any technology unless they agree to be unified. They won't give them technology unless they get rid of the death penalty. They won't do this unless they, get rid of poverty, right? So there's this kind of like, there's this weird 100-year process where that happens. But like, so that's the explanation. It's like, whatever. But they're post-scarcity before the arrival of the replicators. Because the Vulcans basically say, look, we're not going to give you any technology unless everybody gets it at the same time. So that's like the first thing. The implication there is a little bit weird, but nonetheless, right? Because that's a very kind of paternalistic, kind of like humans are
not very Prime Directive-y. Although Prime Directive was a human thing, right?
Well, the Vulcans had kind of a form of the Prime Directive, but that emerges later with the founding of the Federation because of how much damage Archer caused by interfering in other people's culture. That's the explanation, actually.
My dad's like a weird. So he's like a Republican, I think. He like votes in, or he registers independent, but he listens to like NPR and Glenn Beck, so he can get both sides. But like he
the two
fucking
sides.
loves that show, and if I recall, it's been a long time, but he like totally saw Archer as like space cowboy, like somebody to admire and to aspire to be, and like.
Oh wow.
Maybe
I've not met Archer yet.
Because Archer's like a nice guy. He's a nice guy.
Okay.
Actually, in a lot of ways, kind of, he makes me think of Mike Rowe from like Dirty Jobs.
You know how TNG is responding to like Reagan and the early Bush years? Star Trek Enterprise was very specifically like early Bush administration.
Yeah, they were very much.
Episodes, they have da-da-da episodes. They have this like very kind of like dictatorship episodes. They have this whole thing with Section 31 being unaccountable and like CIA torture and all this stuff.
Yeah,
so it's very much in the same way that
they had an HIV episode.
Really?
There is this whole thing where when Vulcans mind meld, they can like pass on this disease, and the Vulcans had outlawed mind melding for like decades because they were like, no, it's spreading this disease. And then like what's her name? I forgot it again. T'Pol. I think she catches the disease from some like rogue group of Vulcans who are still mind melding because it's like part of their religion.
This is cool that Star Trek dealt with HIV and still managed to eliminate queerness from the conversation.
Dealt with it like hella late though. Like when this show was running in like the 90s. I also remember Captain Planet. If anybody remembers Captain Planet.
Very much.
I remember them having an HIV episode too.
They would have done it before Star Trek Enterprise, definitely.
Yeah, no, this was like late. This was like when it had already. This is like the most liberal thing about Star Trek is, at least with Enterprise, they dealt with issues when it was politically like you have to.
we've gotten way off track now, but that's, I think, okay. This is probably a healthy point to wrap shit up. Unless, again, I said, do you have anything else last time? And you said, nah, but then we talked for like 25 more minutes, which is rad. But do you have anything else?
About Star Trek?
About
or just
Star
a plug
Trek.
about your life, whatever.
I don't do plugs. I'm good on that. Don't worry.
What?
I don't do plugs. I'm good at that. Don't worry.
You don't do plugs. All right. Well,
I don't like to advertise myself. I try to be in the background.
yeah, but we love you and we want to elevate you.
I have a Twitter. You mentioned it. That's about it.
Okay.
Yeah, and this is our my good friend at yungneocon.
It's spelled YUNGNEOCON, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's also yeah. I've always found that joke funny to myself, but it doesn't necessarily translate it.
I think it's fucking hilarious, but I get why other people don't get it, but I like it.
Yeah. Young Neocon, who when I hear the name, I imagine just like great SoundCloud rapper.
But what's that guy? Baked Alaska, who did like the respect the police. Rap.
Yours is like respect. I don't even fucking know.
I mean, if we're holding on like the neocon theme, you just like respect Rumsfeld.
Right. Oh, Kissinger. Kissinger is my persona.
Yeah. Respected statesman.
That's
Henry
beautiful.
Kissinger. Oh my god, I can't wait till that dude dies. What are we gonna do? When he dies, we're bringing you back onto this podcast.
In your persona.
In your persona.
I'll dress up as Kissinger.
Yeah, it'll be great. You can dress up for us because we're not going to put your video on the internet.
It's going to be great. Oh, man, fuck. But yeah, I'm totally into coming back. Let's just let every once in a while find an episode of I guess any Star Trek.
If you're into this, you can be a recurring guest.
Yeah.
Because I kind of want to do these like midweek episode things where we just like talk about Star Trek because I fucking love Star Trek like so much.
We could do a single episode, or we could do something like we watch all the Borg episodes, or we watch all of
the all the Borg episodes. Those are my favorite ones.
Or all of the reactionary episodes. You know what I mean? Like
that
sounds great.
Okay, yeah. This doesn't have to be an every week thing. This can be like a once a month thing or whatever you want. Like every now and then, though, we should drag you on here to talk about Star Trek.
Yeah, and other sci-fi too. But
yeah. I mean, I don't know a lot of sci-fi. I know Star Trek and I know Terry Pratchett, which is not film.
This show is so good. The Expanse is so good. So you'll pick up this analogy right away. You have Earth.
Wait, what is it called?
The Expanse.
Expanse? Okay.
So the Earth is this liberal capitalist democracy. Earth and the Moon are liberal capitalist democracy governed by the UN. Mars is a revolutionary society devoted to one thing, the terraformation of Mars. And the asteroid belt is this third society that both Mars and Earth exploit for raw materials and natural resources and labor. Who they call
Elon Musk is sending us.
And they call everybody terrorists and all that stuff. So the whole show is like it begins as kind of like a neo-noir investigating this issue, and like basically so it's first world, second world, third world, right? So it's communism, capitalism, and imperialism, and then like it all gets thrown into like disarray when sort of like an alien presence like emerges into the world. So it's basically like an allegory for first of all the Cold War. I mean not Cold, but like communism versus capitalism, but how both are exploiting this third world nation. And then like this alien presence throws everything off. It's really.
Oh my god! Can you please DM me some info on this show so I can find out where to pirate it?
It's so good.
Yeah.
Okay, this sounds like right up my alley. I love it.
This whole new project
here is that Sci-Fi canceled the show.
Oh fuck them! Sci-Fi ran a whole show about a dude or about like snakehead fish attacking people, and they're gonna cancel a decent ass show like this.
Well, no, but listen, it gets worse. Jeff Bezos personally intervened and saved the show. And
on
Amazon.
No, we have to talk about this show now. Jeff Bezos is
That's cool that he doesn't get the joke.
Or he does, but like, fuck.
another communist, like Ian Banks's Culture series or something. He's apparently adapting some like anti-capitalist sci-fi show, and everyone's like, "What the? Do you not get it? Like, you're the richest person alive, right?" But I don't know.
Anyway,
okay.
All right, so everybody, good things are coming.
Yeah.
And get ready for us to monetize the shit out of this show because big money.
Yeah.
And I need to make some money here. Just kidding. It'll always be free.
But yeah, thanks
That might be a
again.
lie.
All right.
Young
Thank
Neocon,
you, Young
it's been
Neocon.
real.
It has been so much fun.
Yeah.
Again, I'm Alberto Army on Twitter.
I'm at Pinko_snob.
We're at popcorn_pod.
And this has been our amazing guest at YUNGNEOCON, Young Neocon. With a U.
Yeah, check us out. SoundCloud, rate us on iTunes, all that shit. Yeah, it's been real, friend. Nice to see you.
Yeah. Peace.